Okay, so what we're going to look at doing is tying up a double egg loop and a Yarnie for side drifting for Steelhead. So I have a few of them tied up already right here. This is an 8-pound Maxima Ultra Green leader. I'll do 8 and 10-pound leaders, sometimes fluorocarbon and monofilament. These are the yarns that I often use when tying up my Yarnies here. No rhyme or reason for any of them, they just seem to do well, and I like to have a lot of variety, so I provide myself quite a few options. In addition to the leader, 8-pound Maxima, and the Yarnies, I also tip each hook with a bait button, as well as puffballs, and varying in size and colors. And I try to match my Yarnies as close as possible. I don't know that it's extremely important. That's just how I am. And then when I'm on the river, I always have this box with me in case I need to tie additional Yarnies or make more worm leaders. This is an example of some worm leader rolls here that I'll tie up. I do like to fish them every once in a while, change it up a little bit so they can get something different and maybe a little different presentation than the fewer boats that went before me went. These are some 10-pound Maxima Ultra Green leaders as well. Tied up, just depends on my main line if I'm running 10 or 12, whether I'll run these or not. And these are 8-pound fluorocarbon leaders. I like to run these just to have a little bit clearer line and lower diameter, less drag when I'm drifting. So to get started, what I always do is just grab my leader roll, the 8-pound Ultra Green. I don't usually pre-measure my leaders before I cut them. I just know that I cut them long enough. And then when I'm done, I try to cut them into a general length. Some of these are higher up as they're higher up on the roll. But just in general, I'll come down here at the end of all my leaders and just kind of cut them to have some uniform measurement to them. 2.5 to 3 foot leaders is what I prefer. So this is an owner hook, and I'm going to tie the double egg loop, which begins with one side of the leader going through the eye. I then pinch the bottom of the hook, create a loop, and then run that back through the eye in the opposing direction that I initially came in. After I do that, I grab the hook at the top of the bend, like that. So pinching this tag loop here out the back. I now have my main line leader still here. I take the leader and wrap it around and behind the eye multiple times. I like everything to be uniform, so I do about 10 wraps. I then pull tension down on the main line, pinching the barb and the line at the same time, and then I can reposition my hand to pinch where the loop and the wraps meet, like that. After that, I'll run my hand down the leader line, taking the other end of the leader, the opposing end, and running it through the top of the eye. One thing I recommend doing here is with this little tagline here of the other leader, making a noticeable difference in length than your initial line that's coming through. That'll be very important later to know which one to pull. So I always make my second line to go through the eye longer than the first one that went through. I'll grab that again here. So I will make that one noticeably longer. Now this is kind of the tricky part to where some of these get lost. So what I'll do is I will now transition the pressure points from that finger to these fingers. This line was my loop line, the one I am making my wraps with. So now I take the other line and I pull it back. Sorry, that came out. I take the other line and I'll pull it back along with the loop. Like this. Now pinching, again, everything at the top bend of the hook, and when I release, I will pull down on this to, again, keep the tension. Wrapping over my loop again. I'm doing about 10 wraps, as I did 10 wraps the first time. I like 10. It allows my egg loop up front to have enough room without causing issues with the Yarnie. So now I've made my wraps and I've pinched the entire thing again here. I will now pull the longer tag line through, drawing all of the excess line out. That leaves a fairly clean double egg loop with a little bit of tagline that I will clean up after I've pulled it tight. So now I have this loop where I will place my yarn and my egg loop where I can add egg to, or I actually don't have to use it at all if eggs aren't working that day. So what I do now is select the yarn to use. I like to cut small sections. I really like this color a lot. So here's one pre-cut. Two, three, and let's add something else to it. Orange lately seems to be a very good color, so we'll add some orange. Again, I'll do 5 to 6 pieces of yarn, just depending on how much color I want in there. So then if I ever want, sometimes I'll throw a white strand in here, create a dot. Not always. Sometimes it's just whatever the kids pick out is what yarn I'll use. So we'll go ahead and use something along these lines. Kind of organize them a little bit before they go in the loop. So now I put them in the loop. And I've got that initial small tag line. That will draw this loop tight around the yarn and the hook. So once I've drawn that tight, I pull again on my main line and then cut off that excess tag line, as this one hook and this one Yarnie will stay together until it's either broken or I decide I'm done with it. I then begin clipping excess pieces off in fairly large chunks. I like to continually kind of fluff the yarn as I cut to start to give it a little bit of its shape. So I don't take too large of sections. I like to work my way down. It does take a lot more cuts. I'm fairly particular about how my Yarnies churn out. I'm probably more particular than the fish are. Here shortly, it's starting to take shape a little bit. I'm gonna probably get it to about half the size that it is now, maybe 2/3. And I find when I use 5 to 6 pieces of yarn, that the Yarnies hold up longer. And once I get down to the core of the Yarnie, it starts to maintain a little bit better feel and firmness to it that I like to have. I don't like a cast out a Yarnie and then after one drift it got beat up on the rocks and now it's just messed up and frayed. I do cut away from the front a little bit to provide that egg loop its opportunity to do its job. So I do cut back from there. So it's coming into shape now. I'm getting pretty close to having this thing whipped out. Again, I'm pretty particular, like I said earlier, probably more than the fish. So I try to have it as round as possible. I don't like any frays. I don't like any of that. I like very clean cut Yarnies. So I actually probably spend a little more time than is necessary on these. It's kind of heartbreaking when you take your time and try to make these nice. You cast out and 15 seconds later you bust it off. It's never fun. So the next step for me would be selecting a puff ball to complement this Yarnie. A few different colors in there, red, pinks, orange. Really any of my puff balls would work. I usually try to match kind of what's at the tail end, so maybe a slight orange. So this one right here actually looks about perfect. I like the fact that it's got some of the red, some of the orange. I think it'll complement it well. Again, I don't know that it matters, but it's what I like to do. I slide that up there pretty firm, still allowing room for the egg loop now. I want to add eggs. And the last thing I do is I tip it off with a bait button. I don't believe that these are absolutely necessary. Fished a lot of years without them. But they are nice, and it does complement the whole bait pretty well. So that is a complete double egg loop Yarnie that I would then add to my leader roll to allow my tying up to be quicker. So essentially I feed it through the bottom of the pipe covering. Nope, lost it through. There we go. Caught on some of the strings. Get a bunch of them in there. There we go. So now that that's through, go ahead here, pull it down to the others, hook it in. There you go. I've got room for about 2 more on this roll, and then this roll will be complete as well. I have about 120 to 140 of these pre-tied at any one time, and could grab any of them with confidence and feel that I could catch a fish on them. So what you're looking at having when you're done would be your drift rod. This one needs a Yarnie added. So on this one I'm running an 8-pound mono maxifilament, mono max green, sorry. Add a puff ball. That yarn, clear that hook a little bit. I also like to run that high-vis Maxima green line as a main line. Then I run it down to a snap swivel. Right there, main line, leader, snap. With the snap swivel, the weight system we use is slinkies. So a lot of times I'll fish a 2 or a 3 in our rivers here. So these are slinkies made with .250 size shot. Throw it through the paracord there, clip, and now it's ready to fish. Main line, leader, weight. It's as simple as that to start catching winter steelhead side drifting.